This is Bloomberg Business of Sports.
The business of sports can be intimidating or hard for a startup to break into.
We really appreciate when our owners are actually there, with us through the journey.
Teams, ours especially, have been very intentional to diversify at all levels of the company.
I think we're in the golden years for the NFL and college football.
Our demographic reach has continued to expand.
This is going to be really unlocking the streaming platform for sports fans.
Sports valuations are rising. We'll see when they peak.
You don't have to be the best in your sport to make a whole ton of money.
Bloomberg Business of Sports from Bloomberg Radio.
This is the Bloomberg Business of Sports show where we explore the big money issues in the world of sports. I'm Damian Sassower. Michael Barr has the week off, and Scarlet will join us a little later in the show. Coming up today, we hear from Kimmel of 76 Capital, a VC fund focused on the future of sports.
The world of sports and the investing in sports has really changed over the last 8 years. And it was something, we recognized, and my team at 76 Capital recognized that and said, wow, this is unbelievable. The sports industry had not been disrupted by tech, data, and analytics like all the other industries out there today.
Plus, F1 driver Pierre Gasly joins to talk about the business of Formula One.
With my sort of experience from an athlete's side of it to the team, but also more from a business side of it, building a strong team that will allow the team to perform and get to the target that we set ourselves.
All that to come. First up, though, we head to the Paris Games. I'm joined now by Bloomberg News sports reporter Vanessa Perdomo. We caught up with Paul Caine, who is in France for the events. Paul is the president of IMG Events, and on location, he's also a former Bloomberg colleague. Paul, welcome to the Bloomberg Business of Sports.
I love being on Bloomberg.
This is a cool moment.
Welcome home is what we used to say.
Welcome home.
Welcome home. Yeah.
Well, Paul, we have to just kick this off. I mean, we've got the Olympics going on. We just had the World Cup. We have Super Bowls. On Location provides all sorts of premium live entertainment around such events. Talk to us a little bit about the firm, where you're going and where you're at.
So we are, On Location. It's a great business in that we create experiences for the world's largest events. So yes, we're here in Paris for the Olympics. It's been an incredible event, and we've been very excited about what we've seen. But On Location works with many rights partners. We have over 220 rights partners all over the world. For example, not just the Olympics, which is why we're here, but we're the NFL. We do the Super Bowl, the Pro Bowl, the draft. We have the NFL Hall of Fame enshrinement, which is also happening this week. This week or this past week, we have the World Cup coming up in 2026. We do all the NCAA championships, PGA events, NASCAR events. I mean, amazing breadth of premium experiences, certainly in sports. We also work in the world of music and culture as well. So what we're best known for is sports. And it really feeds into the concept of, how do I want to go to an event? Do I just want to buy a ticket and see it? For a lot of people, that's going to an event. When you come with On Location, you're getting an experience. So it's more than the ticket. It's hospitality. It could be transportation, hotel. It could be meeting incredible athletes for that particular sport. It could be getting on the field or the court. It could be getting a behind-the-scenes look. It could be a once-in-a-lifetime experience. But that's really what On Location does.
So, when you're talking about all of that, all of this encompassing things that has to do with the event, adjacent to the event, all of these things that you offer, what is the market for that? And what do you see that people really want, when they're attending these events, and how it's expanded past just attending the game?
So when we think about going to how it's expanded, I mean, look, On Location's been around for almost 10 years, and it was founded by the NFL with the idea that they could give people a better experience at the Super Bowl. That was the original concept, and it broadened over the years since then. So we've really changed the game in that with all of these events that we do now, we really just evolved the way people experience it. And I'll give you some examples, like with UFC. UFC is a great fan experience. You got a ticket, you go, watching the athletes and the actual event itself is so good. But what On Location does is we bring our guests not just great seats, and some of them are just like amazing seats, like first row type seats, but also we give them access to the weigh-ins or the press events. They get to go into the locker room. And in some cases, we even get the opportunity where they can walk behind the fighter, the main card, as they walk into the octagon. I mean, how cool is that? And you consider the promoter table. I mean, these are like unique experiences. Now, not everything we do is that elaborate. Sometimes it's really very straightforward as a great seat and hospitality. And even that is a great experience because with the hospitality, you get special entrances, often get gifts or gifting, you get personalized attention, and because we work directly with the rights holder, you're getting an absolutely inside experience. So the product that we have is official. There are a lot of companies, concierge companies out there that will piece together these types of things for you, and they'll use influence to get access, but they're not official. So the difference between an official product and a non-official product is, number one, is it's really the inside product and the inside line. Two is you're getting the best price and the best seat because there's no surcharge from a third party. And three is it's an actual product that every element of it will be delivered. And especially at some of the world's largest events, there are a lot of people out there who are going out there and offering non-official product. And as a consumer or as a person or a business, or you're entertaining your best customer, you want to make sure you're getting an official product. And that's the On Location difference. And when you go on our website and you see the breadth of experiences that we have, that again, start with a ticket and hospitality and then work all the way up to some of the more bespoke things. And then for the super bespoke, you work with our sales teams more directly because that's obviously a much more premium relationship. Then, it's you ultimately get like the ultimate bucket list or the ultimate client entertaining or the ultimate like immersive opportunity.
All right, Paul, let's tear up the script here. I'm on your website now. I'm looking at October 6th, Jets versus the Minnesota Vikings at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium in London. Yep. I'm looking at 1,300 to 3,000 with a hotel. Then you've got another package with flights. I'm looking at, the pregame, the postgame, all that stuff. And I'm looking at these prices and they're not all that bad. I'm curious, what does your typical client look like? I mean, is it a super wealthy, Wall Street finance guy? Is it your average, business owner? Talk to me about where you see most of the demand, what sports, and where it's coming from.
So that's a great game, right? You're in Tottenham Stadium. You're on an official NFL package, and not everything is super expensive in what we offer. It always depends on the event. So an event like the NFL Tottenham game, you can certainly buy tickets on for the regular game. And then when you get our package and you come with an official package, you're getting a great hotel room, you're getting official transportation, access to the stadium, official pregame hospitality, fantastic seats. You're part of the NFL experience at that point. So the customer is often a Jets fan or an NFL fan coming from the United States, going to see their favorite team or their favorite sport as part of a trip to London. It's also somebody who lives in the UK or Europe who loves the NFL, watches it on television, but doesn't always get to see it in person because it's not in their backyard like it is in the United States. So it's those fans. But often we find that they're businesses, small companies, large companies who want to take best guests. Like, for example, a law firm, an investment bank, will say, hey, I got a big client who's a huge Jet fan. I want to fly them to London and take them to an incredible experience. And what a great way to build a relationship with a client is you're getting an incredible all-in, all immersive experience, and you're getting a quality product. So the business, there's a combination.
Well, Paul, I only like to fly private, right? And I'm looking for the Nets Jets package on your website here. And I play a lot of golf. I want to go to St. Andrews up in Edinburgh. Can I call you guys and you can handle that all for me? Are you more like a concierge service around these events as well?
So the difference between On Location and a concierge service is a concierge service is piecing together inventory that they don't own. They're not official. They don't have the rights to it, and they're just piecing it together. So we have, when a rights holder or somebody who has a big event, they look for an experience and hospitality partner to represent themselves, because they need and want somebody that's credible, that knows how to deliver, has a good marketplace, has a good database to really make their event work. Now, people come to us because we're the biggest. We have most of the major events. We have the Super Bowl, the Final Four, the Olympics, the World Cup, the Ryder Cup. I mean, I can go on and on. We have the world's largest events, and our scale and capabilities are so unparalleled. And that's why people come to us, and our customers know it too. They know to come to us because they know our offerings. They know that they can, if they're going to the Final Four, they're going to have an incredible experience, and the same experience they're going to go to the World Cup. They're going to have a great experience. And we're starting to build for Milan Cortina in 2026 and LA in 28. And those experiences are going to be extraordinary. The LA 28 Olympic experience is going to be unparalleled.
Yeah, so Paul, I have to just ask you this question, obviously I laughed when I introduced you here in the beginning of the interview that you are ex-Bloomberg, but before that, you worked for 2 decades at Time overseeing some of the world's largest magazine brands. And I want to take you all the way back to your early days when you just started there, when you were working for Teen People. How does someone who's a publisher for Teen People get into this role running on location at IMG events? Talk to us about that path. That's something special.
Well, I have to look back to my path and say this job is the culmination of everything I did. All of those kinds of access and experiences is what differentiates all media products. And it really what separates everybody from why do I rely on Bloomberg, because you're going to get information faster, more accurate than anybody else. And the same thing holds true with when I was at Time Inc. I would bring people to award shows. I'd bring people to fashion events. And they would meet celebrities. We had the inside track because of the brand position we had. So when we got together, when Endeavor decided to buy On Location, we all got together and thought about it and said, well, gosh, what if we were able to package our lives, package what we've experienced in our world of business and media, and offer it to people who don't have access?
That's Paul Caine, the president of IMG Events and On Location. Up next on the show, we speak with Wayne Kimmel, the founder of 76 Capital, about the future of sports investing. That's straight ahead on Bloomberg Business of Sports. I'm Damian Sassower, and this is Bloomberg.
You're listening to Bloomberg Business of Sports from Bloomberg Radio.
Welcome to the Bloomberg Business of Sports, where we cover the big money issues in the world of sports. I'm Scarlet Fu.
And I'm Damian Sassower. Michael Barr has the week off.
And today we have with us Wayne Kimmel. He is founder of 76 Capital. Wayne is a longtime venture capital investor, and 8 years ago, he started focusing on sports. Wayne, I'm curious to hear from you how sports investing has changed over the last 8 years, because in 2016, when you started, I imagine it isn't what it has become now, which is everywhere you turn, people are talking about sports betting, they're talking about the fan experience, they're using technology in ways that we could not have imagined back then.
Well, Scarlet and Damian, thank you so much for having me on your show. I love the show. I listen to it every week. So it's awesome to be here in New York with you. But you're right. The world of sports and the investing in sports has really changed over the last 8 years. And it was something, we recognized, and my team at 76 Capital recognized that and said, wow, this is unbelievable. The sports industry had not been disrupted by tech, data, and analytics like all the other industries out there today. And we just, thought that the opportunity was to get behind the amazing entrepreneurs who were going out there and innovating and trying to change and do the new and sort of the next thing in the world of sports. And it's truly become an asset class now. And we talk about it all the time as sports as an asset class. And that's something that certainly has, really resonated and certainly has really become a thing at this point in 2024.
Well, Wayne, you mentioned an asset class, and now you're right in my wheelhouse here, because I'll approach the venture capital industry as an asset class, right? And, I've been taught, that when you invest in VC, you have to invest in 40 opportunities in the hope that one will hit. And when you're trying to model out a venture opportunity, the exit is less clear. So talk to us a little bit about your exit strategy when you invest in a company, sports or otherwise? I mean, is it selling off to some, wealthy, billionaire? Is it selling off to, a Fortune 500 company? Talk to us about the exit strategy in sports investment.
Yeah, I think what's really interesting, what's happened across the sports industry, is a lot of people looked at it as this cottage industry. It was really controlled by a very small group of people. But what you're now seeing, which is absolutely incredible, is the largest companies in the world are in sports, they're in media, they're in entertainment. I mean, names that you would have never really associated with sports, whether that's Google, Amazon, Apple, Netflix. I mean, the list goes on of all the top technology companies who are now playing in the sports industry in so many different ways. Everything from the media side of things, from the technology side of things, to just being, working with, at every level of sports, right? From the professional side, the collegiate side, the youth side, everything's being disrupted right now. And as we all know, one of the great ways to disrupt and actually innovate and do the next thing is through technology. And that's where we, look to invest and also look to, in many cases, exit some of our businesses. I mean, that's one of the opportunities, for our companies.
Well, talk to us about, you've exited, in some of the, companies that have acquired some of your portfolio companies, or IBM and Yahoo, et cetera. Do they have VC arms? Who are you talking to there? Are they investing in their own capacity on behalf of the company? Are they part of a syndicate? What does that structure look like?
Well, it's a combination of co-investors and as well as strategic partners that we look to bring into some of these companies. Right. But recently, one of our companies, which is called VSiN, which is the Vegas Sports and Information Network, which was started by Brent Musburger and his nephew Brian and Bill Adey. That was a company we started. It was a 24-hour. It was Bloomberg. It was a 24-hour, sports betting network, not a financial network, but a sports betting network. Right. And we sold that to DraftKings. And actually just recently, about a week or so ago, they bought the company back from DraftKings. So to really see what this is going to look like, they report from the floor of a sports book, right? It's like the same kind of thing as you guys reporting from the floor of the stock exchange.
Yeah.
So those are the types of things. And then most recently, there's been a lot of news also about this company called Cosm, which also was the one that acquired our company, which was called C360, which was the pylon cams that you see on a field. So NBC and CBS and ESPN and all the major networks, right? They use those pylon cams to watch a guy dive for a first down. That was our tech, right? That was able to do that. Amazingly, like a 300-person, football player knocks down this pylon cam, but somehow that video gets sent up to the cloud, back to the truck, and it's on our TV screens, right? That's what they did. And Cosm bought them, and now they're using this technology across. They're super cool, they're like mini spheres for just live sports. It's amazing to see what's happening across sports right now, and to really think about, how all this technology is being used and delivering all of this to us as the consumer to really have a better experience.
I want to go back to the point you made about how sports is its own asset class. Given all that, is it a risky asset class? Is it a safe haven asset class? We are in a moment of market turmoil right now, in which stocks tumbled yesterday. People were running for the exits and heading over to bonds, pushing yields lower. No one's saying that this is anywhere in the same area as 2008, 2009, or even something smaller than that. But I'm curious to get your take on how you think sports as an asset class would perform if the economy does turn south and you have a lot of those institutional players that you're saying now in this space needing to raise money.
Yeah, I think it's really one of the big things about sports is something that truly consumes all of us. It's something that where we all play and work out, or you watch and engage and consume sports in some way, or you're out there with your son or daughter or granddaughter, hoping for them to be the next LeBron or Serena or Caitlin Clark or something like that today. So it's really amazing to see how it's really become part of our overall everyday DNA. It's unbelievable to see how we all are involved in all this, and it's something that whether it was during the pandemic or not, we needed sports. This is something that it's one of those things where regardless of what's happening in the overall economy, sports is something that's constant.
So you're saying it'll hold its value, but even something that holds its value can be overvalued for a while. With all these institutional investors now in this space, you must have seen the demand pushing valuations up to a point where maybe, a little bit of air needs to be let out.
Yeah, I don't think we're there, and I would say also that I would also caution using the word that everyone's in, because everyone's not in yet. This is something that has actually been occurring and happening, and it's not all the way there. We're not at a point where everyone is in. We're now seeing private equity starting to come in across the world of sports. You're starting to see sovereign wealth funds, and you're starting to see this on a global scale and how big sports is across the world. This is not something that's like we're at any sort of high. I mean, we're just getting going on all this, and we're really starting to see these major companies start to dip their toe in the water. You're seeing the investment banks themselves creating, specific sports groups. This is something that
bankers dedicated to the asset class.
100%.
Well, Wayne, you mentioned Brent Musburger earlier, and I just have to ask: is this the recipe for success in sports investment? And what I'm going to say here is interesting. I know you've done some deals with your investors are Michael Rubin, CEO of Fanatics. Arthur Blank of the Falcons. You've invested alongside guys like Ryan Howard and DeMarco Murray. Do you need to have an athlete involved for a company to be successful in sports? I mean, I'm just, I'm curious about this. I mean, you look at A-Rod, right? You look at Chris Collinsworth. You look at some of these successful entrepreneurs. Is that the recipe for success here?
Well, I'll tell you one thing that we think about at 76 Capital is we have something called our Athlete Venture Group. And we think that just like, and again, as I mentioned earlier, I've been in the venture capital business for 25 years, and we were investing in health tech companies. We wanted doctors and we wanted scientists with us when we were investing in those companies. And if you're going to invest in sports, you really need to have, now, do you have to have the name, incredibly named person?
Cachet.
No, man, that's not really what I'm saying. What I'm saying is you want to have someone who is an expert alongside of you, and in the sports world, having a professional athlete who's made it to the top of their game and is really actively, authentically involved. That's what this is about. It's not just putting the name and splashing the name on a press release.
I can't wait till we get Chris No Cachet Collinsworth. He's going to be so happy with that one. No, but in all seriousness, Wayne, I mean, talk to us a little bit about the opportunities, the segments within sports investment that you're seeing that are really most attractive. You mentioned data. You mentioned some things like healthcare and consumer products. Obviously, we know is a big deal. Like, where do you see where's the buzz right now?
Yeah, I see. One of the things I think is really, really interesting is everything that's happening across the sports betting industry. I mean, over the last 6 years, sports betting was illegal in the United States, other than in the state of Nevada, until 2018. And then over the last 6 years, we've now had 38 states pass laws to have sports betting in their states. And to see the revenues go from under $10 billion to now...
Yeah, but they're all going to DraftKings and FanDuel. I mean, is there really opportunity for others to play in that space?
Well, it's going to be a $150 billion market this year. And the answer is yes. And it's not only just the companies that are actually the operators. There's also a whole technology piece of this. There's a regulatory tech side of this. There's an opportunity to actually make the experience better for the fan, make it more customized, make it almost like you're going on, and whether it's Netflix or Amazon. I mean, one of the crazy things is like if you open up DraftKings and I open up DraftKings right now, as we're sitting here, we get the same experience.
Right.
But if I open Amazon and you open Amazon, they'll tell me I'm out of toilet paper at home.
So curating that experience so that if somebody really likes parlays, we're just going to toss a bunch of parlays in his face and we're going to bankrupt them. No, I'm just kidding.
No, they'll give you opportunities to bet on or against the Jets, Damian. They'll give me opportunities to bet on or against the Rangers, basically.
I see where you're going here. Exactly. No, but that's really interesting, making the gambling part of the equation more... I mean, improving that experience, I guess, is what you're saying.
I think it's going to be really interesting. And also just the overall wagering and challenging of friends. I mean, one of our companies is called Lucra, which is working with Dave & Buster's. And it's really amazing to now, it's been really interesting to see how they are powering people to be able to challenge their friends. And that's not only just for money. That could be for a beer. That could be for a burger. To do that now across this, as we talked about the asset class of sports, as this entertainment world, right, starts to continue to grow and grow and grow. Starts with an unbelievable with what Topgolf has been able to do, but now you start to see this now go across all these other areas. And what's that all about? Because people want to be entertained, they want to be engaged, they want to be around sports. Baseball shortens the game a little bit, so now that's maybe one less hot dog, one less beer. So how do you now, as an owner, as a stadium owner, how do you somehow get that additional revenue? Well, it's about maybe the ancillary type of products, the types of things around your stadium, and those are some really interesting things that we'll start to see more and more of in the future.
Last question for you from me. How do you find your opportunities? I mean, do they come to you now? You've been in the business for 30 years. I mean, are you still out there rolling up your sleeves, guerrilla marketing, trying to find the next new thing? I mean, where do they come from?
well, we're all about going out there and meeting the entrepreneurs. I mean, that's what it's really all about, beating the street, going out there, rolling up your sleeves, and, getting on great shows like this and reaching to, the entrepreneurs.
Well, you said it, we didn't.
Well, I really appreciate this opportunity, and it's awesome because this is something that not only allows us to talk about the companies that we're invested in, but also then share what we're all about, share the what we're trying to look for in entrepreneurs, and we are looking for those entrepreneurs who are truly trying to do the next thing and innovate the sports industry. And so it's all about getting out there. It's all about spending time and doing these types of things. And whether it's conferences or going to games or going to all the major events that are happening out there, and hosting entrepreneurs at our own events or going on our shows. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that we love to do, and it's something that, as you said, I've been doing this a long time, and I still love every single day of it.
That's Wayne Kimmel, the founder of VC firm 76 Capital. Coming up next on the show, we hear from Formula One driver Pierre Gasly about the future of motorsports. That's straight ahead on Bloomberg Business of Sports. I'm Damian Sassower alongside Scarlet Fu. This is Bloomberg.
You're listening to Bloomberg Business of Sports from Bloomberg Radio.
Thanks for joining us on the Bloomberg Business of Sports show, where we explore the big money issues in the world of sports. I'm Damian Sassower. Scarlet Fu and Michael Barr return to duty next week. I'm joined now by Bloomberg Originals contributor Jason Kelly. He caught up with Pierre Gasly, driver for F1 Alpine. Jason, thanks for joining us. Welcome to the Bloomberg Business of Sports.
Always love to be here. Thank you, Damian.
Jason, we have to begin with this incredible interview you had with Pierre Gasly, F1 racer, but also, what is he? I think he's only 28 years old now. I mean,
young guy.
And he's making some moves. Talk to us a little bit about what Pierre's up to.
Well, it's interesting. Increasingly we're seeing this. You see this on your show all the time. You and I talk about it offline. These athletes who are increasingly interested in business. When you and I were kids, the thing that you would do if you were a successful athlete, and it's interesting to talk about this, especially, as we're in the midst of the Olympics, is, you're successful, you get on a Wheaties box, you endorse a few products, and, you make some money that way. Now, increasingly, and Gasly is a fascinating example of this, these guys are saying, I don't just want to be an endorser, I want to be an owner. And one of the most fascinating investments he has, I think, is he is now an owner of the soccer club FC Versailles. This is, I feel like you would agree with this is like the hot investment. It's like buy a stake in a soccer club, right?
That's right. Well, it's kind of like, if I'm not mistaken, FC Versailles is like Division III soccer. There are a few tiers off of where they want to be, of playing with the big boys. But, it's so interesting because we've seen, as you know, Ryan Reynolds and a lot of other people. I mean, we had Tony Parker on. Tony Parker was brand ambassador for the Paris Olympics for Alibaba. He's been on the air with us, and he was talking about, he has an ownership stake in a French basketball team. So it's just amazing to me. It's not just a U.S. thing. It seems to be expanding abroad, and certainly France and French athletes seem to be taking advantage of it, no?
Totally. And I'll blow your mind with this, which you may already know, which is Ryan Reynolds, obviously very notable, not just for his acting career, but for buying Wrexham, the Welsh soccer club, with his partner, Rob McElhenney. Rob and Ryan are also investors in Alpine, which is the racing team that Pierre Gasly drives for.
Oh, wow.
So I actually asked him about this in the interview, whether he's gotten to sort of pick those guys' brains on business. He said he hadn't yet, but what he wants is a friendly between FC Versailles and Wrexham, and I have to think he'll probably make that happen. Like, why wouldn't you do that? These are like all the worlds colliding here.
Well, Alpine, and they're also owned, if I'm not mistaken, by Redbird Capital. Yep. That's Jerry Cardinal. But, talk to us about this deal then, about, Pierre Gasly getting involved from the perspective of an owner. I mean, it seems like he's not alone. It seems like some other athletes are involved in the deal as well.
Yeah, it's interesting for FC Versailles, this was, something that very much a passion play for him. He's a huge football fan, as a lot of these athletes are. There's this world of elite athletes, and I'll do, a little plug for my show here, The Deal with Jason Kelly, with The Deal with Alex Rodriguez and Jason Kelly.
Sorry, just Alex Rodriguez is in there also.
Just
forget it, but he's easy to forget about.
Easy to forget about. But, Alex and I talk about this all the time on our show, that, this world of athletes, especially athletes with these big business ambitions, they tend to, sort of run in these packs and do these deals. What I find really interesting, too, about F1 is as this sport gets more and more, it's always been global, but as it gets more and more popular in the U.S., a lot of these drivers are taking advantage of that higher profile and making investments, making endorsements. And by the way, I think it's fair to say, you've seen it. I mean, F1, after a couple years of being a little bit ho-hum and Red Bull literally driving away with everything, there's some really cool stuff happening. It's a very fun season to watch. They're on summer break right now, so everybody's catching their breath. But we're going to get into, I think, a very, very competitive fall.
Oh, my God, yeah. I mean, for our uneducated listeners, this has been Max Verstappen's world, and we are just living in it. It's been Red Bull, Red Bull, Red Bull, but now it seems we have Piastri and the guys at McLaren and Zach Brown, and I mean, they're making a big push here. I mean, they definitely they're still a ways off on the constructors from what I hear. But you know what I think is interesting, just going back to Pierre Gasly here and the fact that he's going to own a piece of FC Versailles, and you know, it is that exposure to Redbird, right, to Ryan Reynolds, to other athletes like I believe Patrick Mahomes is an investor there, and some others, Anthony Joshua,
Roy McIlroy, yep.
So he's taking a page out of their book, and he's again, I don't know if 28's how old he is. I know he's born in 1996. I'm bad with math, but I mean, my God, they're young to be doing this and taking on this type of a responsibility. And look, I mean, let's be clear, FC Versailles, it's no small franchise, right? I mean, he's going to have some real responsibility there. How do you juggle all that, you think?
I mean, I think, what these guys tend to do is, weigh in where they're needed in a lot of ways. As minority owner, they don't have a huge amount of responsibility to the day-to-day. But I mean, let's think about this. If you're a player who's thinking about signing with FC Versailles or another team, and you're on a Zoom call, I always sort of imagine that these Zoom calls are happening, and all of a sudden, like Pierre Gasly hops on and is like, "Hey, man, I would love for you to play for our team." There's something there. It draws viewership, it draws fans, and so I think being both an owner and an ambassador, we saw this happen. I mean, let's think about what's happened here in the United States. What David Beckham has done at Inter Miami.
Right.
I think it's highly, highly likely that Lionel Messi doesn't end up at Inter Miami if there's not a David Beckham involved in the ownership. So I think playing those roles, and I also really liked what you said about, through Alpine being exposed to these other athletes, Mahomes being, a great example of that, who have also taken ownership stakes, not just in F1, but in other sports as well.
Well, what's interesting here, and what makes F1 a little bit different, and Jason, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, is there aren't that many teams, right? There's a limited number. There's only 10, right?
10 teams.
10 teams. So, and I'm just looking at some numbers here. It looks like the most valuable, that being obviously Ferrari at $3.9 billion, Mercedes second at $3.8 billion. My question is, as an investment, for some of these athletes who are investing in, racing franchises like Alpine or others like that, is there any risk that they're going to expand the field? And does that do anything to the valuations of these these racing car? What do you think there?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and it's been to some extent, at least for the time being, asked and answered. You had Michael Andretti making a big push for expansion. He got one step there and then was essentially knocked back by the commercial side of Formula One. It looks like the grid is going to stay at 10, at 10 teams, meaning 20 cars for the time being. And that's largely because of exactly what's underneath your question, I think, which is these existing teams want to protect the economics that they already have. This is fast growing. They're not totally convinced that the pie with an additional team would grow enough that they wouldn't be diluting their own interests.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, Jason Kelly, thank you.
Thank you.
And without further ado, let's bring you part of Jason's conversation with Pierre Gasly.
So, Pierre, it's really good to have you here. It's a busy time, obviously, mid-season. The deal that is front of mind when I think about you is this new long-term multi-year contract you've signed. Tell me about that decision and kind of how you think about it from a business perspective.
Well, it's a very exciting news. I'm extremely happy and extremely proud and excited that we came together with the team. It's obviously a conversation and negotiation that started early this season, as soon as Lewis kind of shocked a bit the F1 world going to with his move to Ferrari for next season. It sort of triggered the entire market, and the conversation and negotiation started as early as back then. So it was important for me to evaluate, the different options for the future. And we didn't have the easiest start of the year, which didn't make it easy for me to make a decision. But then after a couple of weeks and months and seeing the development plan from the team, the new recruitment, the new signings we've got from top teams, and also the ambition and the commitment of Renault and Alpine as a brand, I'm just came to the conclusion that it's definitely 100% the best option, and there's a lot of potential going into that new regulation in Formula One in 2026.
Right. And you mentioned Lewis coming, moving over, and obviously all that triggered. That's a very nice way of putting it. Triggered a lot. What is the net effect of that, or what effect does that have, in the paddock, and as you start to see, this driver may go here, this driver may go there. I mean, there's still some pieces left to do. Is that distracting? How do you sort of keep that, compartmentalized?
Well, just to put it in perspective, Lewis' move is probably the biggest transfer in the history of Formula One. So it did have a massive impact on, obviously, the team. Like Mercedes was directly affected, but also on the driver markets and all the other drivers with contracts ending at the end of this year. So kind of more opportunities, and there were a couple of spots out there. Some new brand Audi is obviously coming into Formula One as well in the coming year, and I must say it was an exciting time in my position where I had different offers on the table, and it was about evaluating on which project do I believe the most. And obviously my heart from the start was always with Alpine. The brand is only a couple of kilometers from my hometown. It's the only French manufacturer in Formula One, and obviously my ambition with Alpine is way bigger than what we've achieved so far in the year and a half we've been together. So I always wanted to continue with the team, but I also needed some guarantee and making sure about their commitment to the sport and into the future, and making sure that they'll be able to provide me with a strong package to fight at the top of Formula One.
Yeah, you mentioned something that I think is so fascinating, which is the national pride that obviously you have, this being the only French manufacturer. I mean, it does feel like Formula One, as much as in any sport, there is this sort of like cultural connection that countries and fans have to drivers. It sounds like that does factor into your decision making, no?
It did factor in. Obviously, the performance is, at the end of the day, was the most important.
Sure.
I'm a competitive person. I'm a competitive athlete, working every single day to try to be the best of my sports. But obviously, I'm also someone emotional, and I've got particular connection with the team, with the brand, with the people I work with. And Alpine being a French team, there is that sort of X factor that comes in.
That's F1 driver Pierre Gasly speaking with Bloomberg Originals contributor Jason Kelly. Thanks for joining us. I'm Damian Sassower. Tune in again next week for the latest on the stories moving big money in the world of sports. You're listening to Bloomberg Business of Sports from Bloomberg Radio. Around the world. Stay with us. Today's top stories and global business headlines are coming up right now.